Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. We're taking another look at VTHO. So thank you to my community for reaching out and asking that I cover this because we did see some pretty significant increases here today so far. So things are looking on the up and up for VTHO. And just want to let you know as well, I'm not a financial advisor. This is always for educational purposes only. Do your own research. Furthermore, I have a link to my Patreon account down below in the description. If you'd like to consider joining my signal group, I send out 3 to 5 signals per week, buy signals, sell signals to ensure that you understand specifically how to find a good entry, because a lot of my viewers, unfortunately, don't have enough time in the day to be able to search for these entry points, whereas I do. So thank you again to my community for asking that I go ahead and start a signal group. So far, it's been fantastic, and I really love my contributors. Thank you. Moving forward, I do also have a link in the description below to my Telegram community. Feel free to get engaged there as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at VTHO. Thank you to my community again for requesting I cover this. This is a very popular one, and I can see why, because it is good quality coin, right? Obviously, we see a recovery here today, and I just want to talk about that. Before we get going, if you're new to the channel, always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first just to get a baseline on the market so you know specifically what's going on, because these coins are self-reliant on usually the top 2 coins. Okay, we got both networks that are essentially working as the the big daddies, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that first. So Bitcoin. Let's take a peek at the 4-hour chart. I always like to look at the 4-hour chart first just to help identify big picture, because the moving averages tend to work the best, all right? And I use the 200 and the 50-day simple moving average on my charts, because on the 4-hour chart, it just seems to work the best for me. Some people prefer the EMA lines. I think they respond a little too quick to the longer time frames. It makes more sense on the shorter time frames. So that's the reason why I use that here. But we can see we've got a resistance level at about 42,000. Support at 30 was tested and broken, but only for a short while, right? It recovered quite quickly. So if you were able to buy that dip, which I was actually able to do so, I actually signaled that in my signal group, which is available, by the way, in the description below through my premium Patreon account. This was an indication of a buy signal when it came down that low, because that was the lowest it had ever been. And Bitcoin has a tendency of selling off major and then recovering at least half to 2/3 of its original decrease in price. So that's what we saw there. But regardless, I would say 29,000 is a pretty strong support level, because keep in mind that was back here. So if you see right back here, we got a 29,000 was the original support level back in January. So that was kind of essentially tested today. But if it comes back down again, I would say that between 29 and 30 would be the range. If it drops below that, they say the next support level is about 26,000, and that should be the extreme lowest point we should experience, right? I don't foresee it coming back down that low again unless there are some world events that occur. I do feel that based on its momentum, big picture, Bitcoin's still a very good coin, and it's definitely going to recover as well everything else. Okay. Furthermore, there is a roughly $41,000 support level, correction resistance level, and that I'll just go ahead and mark that there, because that was tested a few times in the past. So that would be potentially our next major resistance. But keep in mind, we got the 50 and the 200-day moving averages right there, plain as day, working as potential resistance levels. Okay, so we will see what happens, but history repeats itself. It'll just break right through those two and essentially come back up to test 42,000 here in the next couple weeks. All right, let's look at Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is very similar to Bitcoin. I say this a lot, time and time again, ever since we had this major sell-off from the China candle on the 18th. We've pretty much seen Ethereum, I wouldn't say draw dead, but it essentially is mimicking Bitcoin, which is odd because it doesn't normally do that. But I think with all the the FUD and the market, everyone's concerned. No one really wants to invest in Ethereum, but once Bitcoin hits 42,000 and surpasses that point, then we're going to really see some serious things from Ethereum. It's probably going to take off at that point. But for right now, it's very affordable, good pricing. Anything under 2,000 is a good affordable price for Ethereum, because this one has a fantastic network. Do your own research, but there's awesome things in the Ethereum network, regardless of the gas fees. Okay, so that is kind of what we're looking at there. Let's go ahead and take a look at VTHO. We'll look at the 1-day chart. We'll see what's going on here. So first thing I like to look at is the moving averages. We do have a potential death cross. Again, potential. It's really not that crazy. Oftentimes it can work the opposite of what you'd expect. So I don't put a lot of weight into that, but oftentimes, like with Bitcoin, for example, recently, that's what we did see. That's why we saw a major sell-off in the last couple of days. Last, 3 to 5 days is when that death cross came down. And what I mean by death cross, if you're new to the channel or just in general, when the 50-day moving average comes down and it crosses with a 200, it typically has been known to drive the price down. Okay, so it can push the price down. Now, will it happen? Hard to say. My guess would be no, considering how far driven down the price is right now. Look at the price action, just barely under 30. You'll see this with a lot of altcoins right now. With the RSI being under 30, that's an indication of a significant buy signal, which is why we're seeing the price action recently here change. Also note that we got this convergence that just happened, and we might see basically, or no, sorry, that was a divergence, and we're going to see a convergence upwards here soon. So there's a good chance that we will see VTHO continue upwards and, to infinity and beyond, right? If you're familiar with that reference. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart next. Similar scenario to a lot of coins right now too. This is pretty standard. The 50-day moving average is working as a major resistance level. It tried to test the 50-day and got rejected, and now it's retracing back down a little bit. So for lack of better terms, this is going to be a pretty strong resistance level for a short while, but it can only progress on for so long, right? So this 50-day moving average will probably continue over like this. Price might continue like this, and then it will break. It may not break that hard, but it typically breaks pretty fast through support and resistance levels. Okay. So that's just something to note. The 200 will also be another potential resistance, but I don't foresee that being an issue just based on the simple fact that the price action is pretty low, or just generally speaking, the price right now for VTHO is extremely low compared to where it should be. All right, and if you look at its history and how well it's done, let's actually take a look at this here. I think this is important. Let's look at the one-day chart again. And let's look at April 17th, because that was the first major Bitcoin sell-off. So April 17th, where are you? So we got April 17th right here. So this is the beginning of the end, so to speak, for VTHO, right? That's when we went from an average of upper 50s to low 60s in Bitcoin, and right here it dropped about 15% one day. So VTHO was not impervious. It definitely dropped, came back up on the 25th, which most other coins did, consolidated, and then we had the wonderful Elon candle on the, I believe it was the 8th, or was it the 12th? Yeah, it's the 12th. It's right there, this guy right here. So Elon candle, number 1, and then of course the major China sell-off right here. So that being said, I like to look at that because understanding how those impacted this coin really helps us understand, its place in the market, and basically just means that, VTHO is fairly reliant. I would say if you're going to give it percent, 80 to 90% reliant on Bitcoin. So with its recovery here today, it's kind of mimicking Bitcoin in a sense. But it also, just keep this in mind too, when things were good for Bitcoin, things were great for VTHO. And I think it's safe to say that this range here is where this price action should be, right? In other words, a lot of coins didn't make it this high previous to those things happening. So it makes sense why the price retraced back down so well. But oftentimes when you have an increase in price, the retracement should only be 50% of that increase. Okay, so if we have this increase here, then the price action really should be right in this range here. So if Bitcoin is still in the 60,000 range, or just say upper 50s, we would probably see a price action right in the range of just say, 0.018 upwards of 0.023. Okay, so right about there. So just keep that in mind. That's kind of how VTHO should be performing. So is it a good value to buy right now? Yes, I think most coins are good values right now if you can afford it and you're not holding on to those previous coins and just significantly damaged because you don't have any money to invest. That's the main reason why you want to ensure that you are selling your coins when you find a profit and keeping that money in USDT or Tether to ensure that you have the option to be able to buy these dips. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been buying dip after dip. They're out of money too. I've run into that in my altcoins, but thankfully I have some other coins that I'm doing well with, which are just mostly my day trading, my short-term swing trading. But my hodling, if it's any consolation, my hodling coins are damaged right now, just as yours are, I'm sure. So you're not alone. Trust me on that. But that's why you hodl, right? The purpose is to invest in the future, big picture, and that's kind of the idea. And again, big picture VTHO is definitely much better than we're seeing right now. All right, so back down to, I think we already looked at the 4-hour chart. Let's jump over to the 1 hour to identify Ishimoku. So let's go ahead and take a look at the cloud here. And as you can see, it's now a buy signal. In other words, if you're unfamiliar with a Ichimoku cloud, it basically tells you when the price is under the cloud, it's a sell signal. As you can see, that is under, sold way down. So had you just say taken that position right there, you would eventually have netted yourself approximately about a 44%, somewhere in that range. Or just say you were being conservative, you could have got about 30% on that short sell. That's pretty good position. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. I recognize that, but that's kind of the concept of the cloud. And here as well, see, we've got this entry point here. So hypothetically, the price is right back down to where it was at before. Even still, it's above the cloud, so it's looking very good. I think 0.006 is a good entry point here for VTHO. That's kind of what the cloud is telling us there. All right. Now let's go really quick back to the 4 hour. Let's see if the here's something I like to identify too, because oftentimes you see a correlation between the cloud and the again this not this cloud here, the cloud on the 1 hour chart. But there's a cloud, of course, and then what I'm trying to get at here, let me spit the words out, is the MACD, right? So you see this little this convergence here for the MACD. Sorry, that's a terrible highlight there. So right there, price converges. So that's basically a signal. On the 4 hour chart, the MACD is really helpful because it pushes the price up and tells you when the price is increasing, of course, and that's usually a buy signal. So you commonly want to try to invest when you have that convergence in the price action moving up, especially after everything being so low and the RSI is being really probably under 30. So what I'm getting at here is the fact that when you go to the Ichimoku cloud, and hold on, let's go ahead and mark this here. We got this convergence right here. Coincidentally, the same exact 4 hour time frame, this same exact 4 hour bar, is the same point in which the price jumped up over the cloud. All right, so let's take a look at the cloud again. Look at that, boom. So had you got an entry somewhere in here, that would basically be a good indication of a buy signal, right? Because again, the 4 hour chart, MACD, was converging upwards at right around, what, 0.006. And right around 0.0062, the cloud told us we have a buy signal. It's no longer in the red. So in other words, I'm just trying to mention that because even though it's not a foolproof system, those two things are telling us that this is a good entry point. Okay, and coincidentally, the price action retraced back down to that point. So I've perceived that anywhere in this range here is a good entry point, right? So again, just something to think about, something to note. So let's go ahead and turn off the cloud and enable my indicators. So I like to look at the VWAP, volume weighted average price, takes the basically the volume of the last 24 hours and expresses it as a price. The EMA is this red line here that basically tells us that we have bullish momentum when the price action is above and bearish when it's below. So right now it's bearish, of course, because we're having a retracement. It does look like it might work itself into a consolidation channel and then potentially increase again later. But the bottom line here is that the blue line, that's the volume weighted average price, the price is below VWAP, and the price is below EMA. So those are two indications right now telling us it's not a good consideration to take entry until we have confirmation above. Okay. Now, again, we looked at the 1 day chart, the 4 hour, and the 1 hour chart, and they do tell us that in this range here, this would have been a good entry point. So that being said, I would foresee that this could still be a good entry point regardless of these two indicators, because of the fact that it does appear to have the momentum, it does appear to be in good position to continue to increase. Again, you want to take everything together and try to make an informed decision. We have some conflicting information here, but keep in mind this 15-minute chart for the EMA and VWAP, this is more designed for a short-term entry, short-term position. All the long-term indicators are telling us we have a good position right now, right? So the long-term indicators are telling us that 0.0062 or lower is a good entry point, okay? But right now, we don't technically have the confirmation. The confirmation I like to look for is just, two solid green bars above EMA and VWAP. So for those of you who are new to the channel, this is an indication of what that looks like. Because I have a personalized notification here. In fact, that's available through my Patreon account. Link in the description below for my signal groups. And what that does is this tells us, these little yellow indicators, tells us that we have two solid green bars above EMA and VWAP. And why that's helpful is because that gives you 30 minutes of confirmation, helping you understand that you are in the right direction. You're heading in the right direction. In other words, when the price is over EMA, this red line here, it's essentially telling us that the bulls are in control. So you can see here, do you see how the price action kind of stays consistent? It kind of tries to test it and it keeps going. That's where the EMA line is helpful. It tells you that there's a bullish sentiment. Inverse, it works, of course, as well on the downside for shorting patterns, but this essentially tells us the bulls are in control. So if you take entry here after a 30-minute confirmation, then you would have a position in which you would be insured in maybe right around here as a rough estimate. You would have held for just say 3 to 4 hours, price would have spiked up, came down, bounced off EMA, spiked up again, bounced off EMA, and then of course you would probably likely want to try to sell somewhere in this range here, and that'd be about a 15% gain. Again, easier said than done, but that is essentially the concept. Now to take your exit and to exit your position, you pay attention when the RSI peaks up over 70. You don't necessarily sell when it comes up over 70, but you want to consider selling when it comes back down. So just say this first jump right here, you had here, let me go ahead and get rid of this guy first. These are kind of getting in the way. You got this RSI peaking up over 70 right here in this 15-minute time frame. So had you taken your exit, exit your position right here, you could have literally sold too early. You could have sold right there. So instead, wait for the RSI to come back down. You see how it bounced off the EMA line and came back up? That would be a consideration to hold because it hasn't tested EMA yet. And it comes back up, and then right here, right at this point where the RSI is coming back down on the second jump, that's where you want to take your exit. So somewhere in this range here, right? So that gives you that extra, what, 5% maybe? Because had you taken entry back here and sold right there, yeah, that would have been maybe an 8% entry, or position rather, had you taken entry back here and sold right here when the RSI first peaks over 70. But what I'm getting at here is you want to try to wait for the RSI to come back down. Don't always take the first exit. You could trim your position, but selling your full position, you would want to wait until the RSI comes back down under 70. So right here is a better exit right here than it is right here. So I hope that makes sense in how I describe that. I try to sneak that into every conversation, every video that I make, just to try to help train you and understand that these are really good indicators. Again, this is more of a short-term trade, right? I mean, this would have been what, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 hours. Okay, so if you're a long-term swing trader, this may not apply to you. You still want to find a good entry point, don't get me wrong, but you don't necessarily have to pay attention to all these things here. Pay more attention to the 4-hour chart and the MACD and kind of see when the momentum is kind of heading for you. Either way, that is essentially what I want to show you here for VTHO. So to confirm my prediction for VTHO, I would say if Bitcoin goes sideways for the next, just say Bitcoin stays sideways for the next 1 month, channels between 33 and 42,000. We will see VTHO recover and come upwards of, 1 cent or maybe even 0.015, because it does have a higher value and it should be valued much higher than it is right now. And a lot of these, the 4-hour time frame for the MACD is telling us good indication of a buy signal, and so is the Ishimoku cloud, right? So we're over the cloud, should be in pretty good shape here. Again, if the price keeps continuing to digress and comes back down here, maybe consider waiting to take entry. But if you like what you see here, I would confidently say that price action of 0.0057 upwards of 0.006 is a good indication of a buy signal. Okay, so right in this channel here, we should be good. Just pay attention to how it reacts to the cloud here in a few hours. We won't see that probably for another 12 to 24 hours. But if it comes down and tests the cloud, the one thing I didn't cover with the cloud is the fact that if it drops below and it's in the cloud, you don't take entry because it's kind of in a state of indecision. So just kind of be mindful of that. So hopefully this provided more answers and questions to you. I hopefully helped you today. And if so, let me know in the comments below. If not, reach out through Telegram, see if we can clarify and hopefully educate you in the process. But don't forget, I have a Signal group now, and you might want to consider starting your membership with me on the 1st of July because, unfortunately, Patreon charges you for the full month. Just be aware of that. But that is a good indication. It's a good place for me to be able to give you these indications of buy signals. I send out 3 to 5 signals per week. Okay. So either way, thanks again for your time. We'll look forward to seeing the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.